Hello again, I'm Doug Smith, and welcome to this week's edition of Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth, Rhode Island. Our special guests today are Nicole Famiglietti, who's a senior at Portsmouth High School, and Dick Carpenter, who's the chairman of the Board of Canvassers here in Portsmouth. I'd like to welcome both of you to the show.
Thank you.
What we want to talk about today is voting, essentially, which is coming up in 3 weeks. And Nicole, I might just ask you at first, you're in high school now. Is voting or national politics or anything of interest to students at all in school?
Yeah, I would say so. I've heard, especially since the 2016 election, I've heard a lot of people around me discussing the different political issues that have come up in the news over the past few years. And there's definitely an interest in voting. A lot of people are talking about, you know, whether they're going to register for one of the parties or as unaffiliated.
Yeah. Okay, well, at least they're thinking about voting, though. That's good. Now, unfortunately, you have to be 18 to vote. So probably you and a lot of your classmates can't vote in this election, but you'll be able to vote in the really important one in 2 years. So
Yes.
that's the key. The key is just to vote, however you vote, you know. Dick, what do you guys do in Portsmouth to kind of encourage voting and stuff like that? Or do you?
I think we do some of it. You know, we don't do an awful lot, to be honest. As we roll into an election, the amount of work that's required just to get the election off and running doesn't give us that ability. You know, but we do have a website. I don't know offhand what it is. I can certainly get that. That has things such as the issues of referendums.
Yeah.
You know, an explanation of what the referendums are.
Yeah, it's something like this probably. Right?
That's correct.
I don't know if you can see this, Bob.
Yep.
Yeah, I got this from Jackie's
Yes.
yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Yep.
It's all about voting. It's got the issues outlined pretty well, how to do it, things like what your precinct is. There's a lot of little complicated things here. But I guess the key thing is that I'm delighted that people are talking about this stuff because it's very important. I mean, if a lot of people think, this stuff's not going to bother me, and you know, why should I be concerned? Everything seems to be running okay. But from the national level on down, it makes a difference to people's lives and what happens here.
That's right.
Things like school curriculums and things. You know, the school department's important, the town council's important, and you know, just things like the quality of our roads, the quality of our life are important. Are things that basically are up for grabs during these elections, and that's why we need young people, particularly, but also everybody from young up to old guys like you and I, Dick. And I'm sure you're younger than I am, but you know, everybody, the whole spectrum's got to get out there. And this is the one time that I think in a system like ours, where the citizens actually have to do something. They have to do some research. They have to do a little bit of thinking on this thing. And it's not something you can just wake up and say, oh, geez, I should go over and vote. It's a little bit more than that. You got to register, et cetera, et cetera. What are there any courses in your school, Nicole, that talk about either voting itself or issues? You know, like healthcare. I don't know if you guys get into that stuff or not.
As far as the classes that I've taken, we talked about, in U.S. history, we talked about some of the more current political issues. Not as much in European history, although I know there is an AP government course that is available to take. So I'm sure that in that class they would address those issues more.
Probably go into more detail about that. Do they have any, has the school department themselves or actually, I guess the principals and those folks, played up voting at all on is something you might consider doing?
Well, I can remember in middle school, the election, the second Obama election, they actually had the students vote in a mock election for president. Obama, or I believe at the time it was Senator McCain, and or it might have been Mitt Romney.
Yeah, I know. But that's
so
Mr. Amaral?
Yes, so we were at the middle school at that time.
Guy. Very smart guy.
Yeah, and so that kind of got people thinking about the elections, and it carried through into high school, and people still I hear them talking about politics
Yeah.
pretty often.
See, it's stuff like that, those activities where you get involved. And it's like war games. It's almost exactly the same. You know, where you're actually playing the part of something and then you see the result. Yeah, so I think this particular election, it's a midterm because it's in between the presidential elections. And again, I think because of a lot of things that have been going on in Congress, I don't know if you guys are attuned to watching the Kavanaugh vote and everything else that went on in Congress. There's just a lot of things going on. And you can't turn on any of those, like NBC or CNN, without getting, you know, all of this stuff every day, 24/7 about this stuff. So I would think some of that even would leak over into high school folks. You know, do you have any political sort of ideas yourself about maybe going into politics as a career? Pharmacists can vote too and be candidates for things, you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Politics I've always found interesting, but I think as far as a career, that's not something that I'm interested in pursuing. But I definitely like to stay updated on the current political climate and what's happening.
Yeah, well, that's good. I think we need more people like you that just want to stay interested, because it's our country, and this is the one time you get to actually make a difference. You know, these voting things. I was really appalled when I found out that at the last midterms, 2012, only 51% of the people in Portsmouth that were registered voted. That's like 1 out of 2.
Yeah, well, at the primaries a few weeks ago, we had under 20% statewide.
So yeah, there's still and I realize that it's kind of there is some work involved. You know, none of this is stuff that you just roll over and just decide to go in and vote. You're pre-registered. I guess you do that when you get your driver's license?
Yes, you have the option. I believe Nellie Gorbea has put into place a system where, unless you check a box that says, I do not want my information put in as a pre-registration to vote, then you are automatically pre-registered.
Yeah.
But yes, I believe you can also do it online at vote.sos.ri.
Yeah, I think we have that. We actually have the website somewhere. Yeah, we had Secretary Gorbea on the program, I don't know, a month ago, I guess. And she's always a great lady. I think she's done a lot to make our election system in Rhode Island safer and more secure. That's another issue, too, and I mean, that's got to be another issue, too, that kids are thinking about, because they know much more about technology than us old geezers. And they probably recognize that how easy it is to tap in and mess around with things. Yeah, I think, is the primary interest among, say, seniors, or you think juniors who, again, they're a year away of even registering for the vote? Is it something that, in general, kids at the school, or just people who are getting ready to leave like you and going to college and stuff?
I mean, last year as a junior, I was thinking about pre-registering because a lot of us are getting our driver's licenses, and that is an option when you get your license. So I think for people who are they're around the driving age, that's when you kind of start to think about it and try to decide, what party affiliation. And
Yeah. I didn't realize you had to affiliate right away. I guess I used to be at one point I was a Republican. I changed to become a Democrat. Now I'm unaffiliated because I kind of like to vote on the person, particularly in local elections. I mean, and local elections actually have an impact, a direct impact on everything you do in town here. So that's another reason I think to get people out, not just kids, but everybody out to vote. Dick, I know you're in your position as the chairman of the Board of Registrars. What exactly do you guys do, and could you explain a little bit the organization and how it works?
Sure. The board consists of 3 people. It has to be All parties have to be represented, you know, so you can't have 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans. It has to be well represented. And our function really is oversight of the elections. Now, we do the registrar's yearly evaluation. We do that, you know. We have, as far as the budget goes, we have final approval on the registrar's budget. That goes up to Mr. Rainier, but we do the original one. Then, as we go through an election like we're going through currently, we have to make sure there's a number of documents that go up to the State Board of Elections, you know, during the process and past the process that we have to sign off on. You know, an example would be people that are looking for absentee ballots.
Yeah.
You know, there's a form to be filled out, and the registrar bulks those, and we have to sign off on all of those. All 3 board members have to sign that. On election day, we will be present in the polls, you know, make sure everything's working smoothly. You know, I go from poll to poll to do that as a chairman. I run around doing that. The night before the elections, we have to go around and make sure that all the poll sites are already set up. So at 7 o'clock in the next morning is when the polls open. So we have to make
who do the poll workers work for, and how are they trained?
The state provides training on all the poll workers. There's actually classes that are presented. And if you're going to be a poll worker, you're required to take those classes over at each election, because things change from election to election based on experience of the previous election. So you have to take those. Certain ones, such as the moderators, they have to have some additional training because they have responsibility for the poll site they're at. You know, so there's a lot of training that goes into that, and the registrar does some also.
Yeah, and poll workers are paid, right?
They are paid, not a lot.
Not a lot.
Not a lot, they are paid.
So they're doing their civic duty plus getting a few bucks for a beer.
They're doing that. You know, they're there, for the most part, they have to be there 6 in the morning, they don't get out till around 9, you know. So, like I say, there's not much, you know.
Yeah.
One of the things we did this year, we started this year with the previous primary, we decided that we would bring lunches in for them. That was never done until this year.
Yeah.
You know, so we do our best to keep them happy. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
It can be a thankless job, I think,
can be.
sitting there for that length of time.
Yep.
Have you ever considered, are people under 18 allowed to be poll workers?
Yes.
Yes, I actually worked as a supervisor at the primary that happened in September.
Okay, good for you. Are you going to do it again, or?
Yes.
Okay, super.
Yeah.
What precinct are you in?
I was at 2704, which is Portsmouth High School.
That's me. Would have seen you there. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Just for clarification on that, Doug, the only poll worker position that requires you to be 18 is the clerk.
The clerk, okay. Yeah, well, that's great. I mean, encourage your fellow students. Anybody, you know, you make a few bucks, but you also see exactly how it works, which takes the fear out of it when you have to vote, you know.
Yes, I've learned a lot about voting just from being behind the scenes and going to the trainings, and I know how important it is to make sure your registration is in order. And
yeah, well, congratulations to you for doing that. I think it's great, and it also will make you a lot smarter about what the whole process looks like. Yeah, this is, you know, one of the things I had asked and got from Jackie Schultz, our registrar, was some reasons to vote and what people, you know, like, so what, if you went up to the average guy, like, let me go to you, I'm putting you on the spot here, but give me 5 reasons that you think you should vote. All
right, well, for one, I would say that you need to elect the people that represent your values. And elect people who represent the values of those around you. The people who you think will do the best for your town or city, your state, and electing people who can represent you at a national level and make your voice heard in Congress.
Yep, those are all good. The one thing we seem to forget is that these guys are handling our money. You know, our taxes and everything go in there, and they're the ones that decide how to divvy it up. So that's an important thing. You know, on the flip side of that, there are a lot of reasons why, a lot of excuses people have for not voting. You know, it takes too much time, there's too complicated, all this kind of stuff. And there is something to what they say. There is some work required on this thing, you know, but we're Americans. We are given through history our system of government that we have an opportunity, every one of us individually, to change. And I think that's important. It's an important message. And I think I mentioned, or maybe I didn't before, it's incredible to me when one vote can really make a difference, and that happened in Portsmouth, as I think I mentioned. And so people shouldn't think that their vote doesn't count, you know, because even though there's a lot of people doing this, yes, but it takes one vote, and yours could be the one that counts. So anyway, congratulations. I'll look for you. I hope you're in 2704 again. I'll look for you when I come to vote. I usually come in the morning early. But it's something I hope everybody does. Any final thoughts before you wrap this up? Anything specifically you'd like to say to, like, what would you say if you're up there at the auditorium at the high school, what would you say to your fellow students about voting?
I would say it's a very important part of our political atmosphere, and if you feel strongly about a particular issue, then go and vote for someone who stands for what you believe in.
Yeah. Good. How about you?
Yeah, a couple of things I think. We were just talking about how difficult the voting process can be, and I give a lot of credit to Nicole Famiglietti, because over the last few election cycles, you know, we've gone to a new system. You know, you don't let them, you know, just as new. And if you remember, Doug, you know, sometimes you'd go into the voting poll site and there'd be long tables with like A through C, and at some of those tables there'd be long lines, you know, stretched out.
Yeah.
With the new eye-polling devices, you don't have to break down by alphabet anymore, so they can keep people moving, you know, moving through the site.
Yeah.
You know, and because every poll pad handles the entire alphabet.
Yeah.
You know, I think with the DS200, which is the machine now that reads all the ballots, you know, it's much more accurate, and it's and much easier to get through. So I think some of that stuff is going on. I think the other thing I'd like to mention when we talk about excuses not to vote, you know, I can't get there and all this other stuff. And I would just mention that the starting today is when the emergency ballots can be. You can go to the registrar's office, and you can vote an emergency ballot. You know, and then that is put away and sent up to the state. And it used to be that you had to come in with a note from your doctor, you were having surgery or you were going on vacation.
Yeah, to prove
This is almost early voting.
Yeah.
It's a step short of early voting.
And the thing is, when up till when can you do that?
You can do this up until 5 o'clock on November 5th.
Wow.
So any day if somebody wants to go in there because they can't get there, they can go into their office and they can vote.
Yeah.
It gets cut off at the end of that time period, November 5th, because that's when all the other sites are getting ready to report their results.
Yeah.
So if the excuse is I can't get there now.
Yeah, get there now
And take care of it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a big plus. And we need to do more things like that probably to make it easier. But I was very impressed. I'm ex-military guy. I'm concerned about security of our systems. And I think the great thing about the Rhode Island system is it's always got paper.
Yes.
You know, if somebody can mess up your computers, because you do feed it in and computers read it.
Yep.
But it's, I mean, and theoretically everything's triple encrypted and all this stuff when it gets sent.
Right.
But if there's ever a question, and like there was on this one vote, for example, 2 years ago, or 4 years ago, you got the paper copy. And a lot of states don't do that. A lot of states go right to electronic, and they don't really know. It's hard to account for everything, you know. But I look forward to, to the day where people can phone in their votes or people can actually maybe use their computers. Maybe at some point we'll go to like Saturday voting, so people don't have to take time off of work and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that we could do down the road, and I think it's just a question of time. And I think Secretary Gorbea has done a great job at trying to push us in that direction.
Yeah, and I would mention, though, because as you mentioned, you talk about the security of the system.
Yeah.
And they've gone through great pains to make this system safe. There's multiple firewalls in the system, and they had the IT branch or whatever from the National Guard tried to hack into the system, and they could not.
Yeah.
So I think to save the system there's no unhackable system, but this system is pretty secure.
Yeah, and I was really impressed that Nellie Gorbea had gone down to Congress to tell them how, they asked her to come up and talk to us about computer security during the election. So, I mean, she's on top of this stuff, I think, and we'll see what happens. Is there? Can you think of going forward? Like you're a senior in high school. Are there other things that would make this easier and more palatable, maybe to students?
About finding time to vote?
Well, it's finding time, but making it easier somehow. Like one of the problems is the age, right? Because a lot of kids aren't 18 until they graduate. And
then going off to college,
yeah, and then
it
going
makes
off to
it
college,
harder.
and then it's different usually.
Yes, because that's
when
another.
that mail ballot and stuff could really help. Come home on a weekend, but that's the other thing. You need to have something open on a weekend. All this stuff needs to be thought through. But there's plenty of ways to do this, and I'll tell you, I've become a real believer that this vote it's so important. Doesn't seem like much, and you could say one vote in the middle of all these millions of other votes doesn't matter. It does, because what you're doing is you're saying these are my values. You're exactly right. I mean, these are my values. This is what I think is right, and it's your one chance to tell politicians, what you think about stuff that they have to listen to you on, because all the other times they'll come up with all kind of reasons why we don't want to do that, we don't want to do that. But the more people get involved, I think the better in this whole process. I'd like to thank both of you guys very much for coming in. Nicole, particularly appreciate your perspective. And one of the things we wanted to do is at your high school, you got some kind of a videography course that goes on in there. We went over there a couple of years ago trying to get them interested to have students maybe come down and do like a Portsmouth High School this month or something. Like a short back and forth talks, discussion, whatever. And something like that videography course and capability would be great for promulgating more information about voting too.
Yes.
So Nicole, what do you think about the political ads that we see on TV today?
I would say that the ads that you see are very negative, and a lot of them are focused on the negative aspects of their opponent rather than the positives that they stand for and what their values are. And so I think that we should be seeing not only a lot more positive political ads that focus on what the actual candidates' platforms are, but I think that we should be seeing ads focus solely on voting and getting out there and making sure you know what the issues are.
Yes, civility, just being kind to each other, seems to get lost in the shuffle here. But you're absolutely right. I'm encouraged, though, by the fact that apparently a lot more women are getting involved in politics now. I mean, and if anybody can bring civility to a Congress that's really fractionated, I think it's women. Women have they're much better than this than men of trying to bring people together and things like that.
Yeah, I think it's very important to have representation of a lot of different backgrounds and just different circumstances that people have been able to experience, so you can draw on those experiences and compromise.
Yeah, it's a lot of these things. The one thing that still bothers me in this country is that the candidate with the most money usually wins.
Yep.
And I'm kind of appalled that money drives our elections, essentially, is what it's saying. I wonder how can we get around that? I don't know.
Well, I would say that usually money correlates to more ads.
More ads, absolutely.
So if third-party groups are able to get out there and make it known they support a certain candidate with certain values, that would definitely help ones who don't have as much access to funds.
I also think it helps when for example, on something like climate change, okay? I mean, I happen to be a believer because I think the science shows that the climate is changing. You know, whether we can do anything to fix it, I don't know. But for people to say, and these are politicians, for whatever reason they do this, say that, nah, this is all a big hoax by somebody, you know, is totally wrong. So what you need people who call these guys publicly on these things. Like, did you know that so-and-so said this about that? Because it's not something that that particular politician is going to, you know, talk about unless somebody asks the question. And so I think folks like that, kind of whistleblowers almost, if you like, they can go back and say, this is this guy's position or this lady's position on this particular subject. I think they do a valuable thing too. Now, you guys have a school newspaper at Portsmouth High School?
I believe we do.
Yeah.
It is online.
What's online? Okay. Jeez. Are we old or what? Yeah, I was going to say that'd be a good place to hold a conversation, maybe about, you know, like talk about that stuff. Do you write for it at all? Or?
No, I do not.
No. But I mean, that'd be kind of good to just give people a sense of what's going on. You know, Dick, you and I have been around a while. What is your take on where we're going with this whole thing? Are we getting better at this, or is it getting more
I think there's
monetized?
Two questions. I think if we're talking about the voting itself, we're getting better. If we're talking about the polarization between candidates, we're getting worse.
Yeah.
And that concerns me. You know, I ran for office multiple times. You know, and granted it was a local level, but I agree with Nicole that the negativity is just over the top. There's always been negativity, but it's just over the top.
Yeah.
You know, and the things that are being said about one another, you know, no matter care what party you are or whether you're an independent.
Yeah.
The stuff that people are saying is just...
I know, it's kind of disgusting that they personalize things like this.
Yeah. And the amount of untruths that are spoken today, there's always been untruths in politics, but the amount that's taken today and spoken about, which is almost slanderous sometimes to the people they're talking about.
Yeah, we've seen
so
that.
I think it's going down a really bad road.
We're out of time, but again, I'd like to thank you, Nicole, and you, Dick, for being here today. And good luck for you. I'd like to see you run for something in a few years after you get your pharmacy degree and go to work. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time on Portsmouth This Week.